Welcome to another episode of Motors and Meats. We're back talking about the 944, 944, which is it? You tell me. We got the car home about a month ago, a little less than a month ago, and we knew we had some issues with the car, and one of the things on the top of the list was the timing belts, because we didn't know exactly when the last time it was done. Well, a couple of nights ago, we headed out and the timing belt broke before we even got at the end of our road. So if you know these engines, you know that valves are smashing into pistons, and that means that even more work needs to be done now. Before we dive into starting to correct this issue, I want to go over with you the things that we fixed since the last video. One thing was that the trunk would not open. Let me show you what it does. So you've got these pegs right here that go down into this hole right here. And on both sides, those pegs were sticking because these fixtures were too tight. All that I did was took them apart to try to figure out what was wrong, and as soon as I loosened the bolts, they popped loose. So that was a really easy fix. I made a little adjustment here, just swiveled that down a little bit so that it would go down further, and now the thing closes like it should. Also, the sunroof had not been opened at all by the previous owner. The seals on it had been changed out by 2 owners ago, and there just wasn't an interest to get that open. So it took some effort to get that thing to open up. And then once we got it open, we had to unclog the sunroof drains. They were clogged up, at least one of them was, and water was getting into the back passenger floorboard. One of the fog lights was out. That was a pretty easy fix. We just picked up a bulb at AutoZone and changed it out. It was, I forget which one it was. We changed them both out though, just to make sure. And that's really nothing more than a couple of screws and then unclipping the clip. Another issue that I didn't tell you guys about was that the gas pedal would act almost like a set of vice grips. If you ever squeeze those, you know, it pulled down at a certain point and then they snap shut. Well, it turns out that the floor was actually bent because there's a spot under the car that I'll show you here that is not a jack point, but people confuse it for a jack point because it looks like a jack point. I understand that Porsche used that on their assembly line to hold the car in place while they put it together, but it's not for lifting the car. If you lift the car by that point, it's gonna bend the floor. And the gas pedal is attached to the floor in a way that if the floor gets bent, suddenly the gas pedal doesn't function right. What it was doing, it would go down about halfway and feel really snug and then slap to the floor. Made for a really interesting drive home. But the fix for it is a great big hammer. We've been busy the last couple of days. We've taken a lot of things off the car. We're about halfway down to where we need to assess the damage on the head, but essentially, if you have any knowledge at all of these 944s, then you know that when this happens that there's going to be some bent valves in the engine. How do we check that? We have to get all the way down to removing the head and see which valves are bent. So far, things that we've removed include the air box, the timing belt cover, the fuel rail has been removed, and the valve cover has been removed. So now we're down to the point of actually taking off the exhaust manifold and the intake manifold so that we can take the head off. Since we got the car home though, we have been driving it, and a lot of people will say if you don't know about the timing belts, you should change them immediately. And now I guess I would say that I am one of those people that would say that because we're ending up with a lot extra work. But we've been driving it. We've been through probably 2 tanks of gas, I think, since we've gotten home with it. So, I mean, that's at least 500 miles that we've driven this car. And it's a really great car other than the things that we know are wrong with it, like the clutch. it was really nothing out of the ordinary for us to go out for a drive the other day. Sawyer's been practicing his manual driving skills. He's been driving it up and down our gravel road, and it was finally time to take it out onto the real road, which we had done just, 1 or 2 nights before, and we were going out just to get away from traffic and just get some practice going through all the gears out away from cars. And we literally made it 250 yards before it broke. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe if you want to see how all this turns out. We've got a lot of work to do on this car, but whenever we finish getting all of this with the valves and with the timing and the clutch taken care of, the major work is done. From there, it's just fun little projects. So we've got a lot that we can do with this car and a lot that you can do with these cars, and I really want you to feel comfortable knowing that you can take on a cheap Porsche and make it something fun that you can use every day. It's really not something that has to be overwhelming. We had a couple of different opinions given to us whenever we were shopping for the cars. One was, why don't you just buy a car that is mechanically sound but hideous, and then you can get the paint done? Well, I don't paint cars. I don't do interior upholstery, so I was looking for a car that already had those things in reasonable shape. I know how to turn a wrench, and apparently I know how to break something too, but regardless, we've got some mechanical things that we can fix, things that I know how to fix, and things that you can fix with just a little basic knowledge of how cars work. I want to do a quick shout out to Casey the Car Guy. His channel is invaluable for the 944. Go ahead and subscribe to him as well.